Hello everyone. We're here today to give you a very short overview of Quirkos, which is a piece of software for qualitative analysis that lets you visualize the themes in your text data as bubbles, which grow as you add text to them. And this makes for a very easy and accessible way to get started with qualitative analysis, something that can otherwise be a little bit intimidating with some of the other software out there, or quite complicated if you're trying to do it on pen and paper. And what we're going to go through today is the software itself, what we can do with it, setting up some example projects, looking at some example sources of data and coding them, and then looking to see the different ways that we can get outputs and reports based on that data once it's been coded. So anyone can download Quirkos. I'm using it here actually on Linux, but it's available for Windows and Macintosh as well. So it's exactly the same piece of software across all of those different platforms. So it doesn't matter what your laptop or computer runs, Quirkos will be able to work on it and to share files with other people working on projects. The projects are exactly the same, and it also lets you use the software in exactly the same way. There's no difference in the features or capabilities between the different software. So what I'm going to start with is just show you how to set up your first project. So if you download Quirkos, you can get a free trial from our website, and that will last for 30 days and give you a chance to try it out and see if it's something that's going to be useful for you. And then if so, all you need to do is order a license code, and then that will unlock the software forever. So the trial version of the software is no different to the full version. You get to try everything. And when you first open it up, it will look something like this. You probably won't have any recent files in your list here, but this shows you projects that we've worked on recently. We can choose those and go straight to any of those projects if we want to. But for now, we're going to create a new project. So I'm going to click on the New Project button on the right here. Now this gives us a couple of options. First, it asks us for the author. Now this is usually used when multiple people are working on one project. So for example, if you're working as part of a team and lots of people are coding on it, then you can see what work different people have done. So you can put in your name here or initials or anything you like at all. And you can also get these two options here. The first for password protecting the file. It's fairly self-explanatory. If you want to make sure that no one else can open the project, if you're dealing with confidential data, then you can password protect it. You just have to put the password in twice there to make sure you don't mistype it. The other option here is for structured questions. And this is used if you're doing something like an online survey or an interview where you ask exactly the same questions to other people. If you're doing something like a semi-structured interview, or you're getting data from, you're doing a literature review or media analysis or something like that, you probably don't need that. It's mostly for questionnaire-based data. So I'll leave that off and then click on the New Project button here again. And this will just basically let us see where we've got different projects and where we want to save it. So I'm just going to put it on the desktop. I know it's a bad thing to clutter all of your files there, but we'll call this breakfast example. And I click the save button there. Now what this is going to do is create on my local hard drive a Quirkos project, which is called breakfastexample.qrk. And this one file contains all the data for the project, just like working with a Word file or PDF or something like that. And you can send that to people, you can back it up, do anything you like with it. So I'll just click the save button there. So there we go. Now we're ready to work with the project. You'll see that the screen is split in two halves here. On the left side, this is the area which will show our themes, which are represented by the different colored bubbles you may have seen in the software already. And on the right side of the screen, we've got the text sources that we want to analyze. And we can change the width of them however we like with this slider there. Now you'll see at the moment it says no source to display. You can create or import a source using the plus icon in the tab bar. So I'm going to click on the click to add source, and I'm going to bring in some text to the project. Now this gives me a couple of options. We can bring in a new source from a file, from a clipboard, from CSV, that's from a spreadsheet, or we can bring in a whole folder of files at once. So let's do that, because I've got a folder which has got some example interviews. So I'll choose entire folder, and then if I choose here example project, there's actually in this folder a bunch of files of interviews, people talking about healthy eating options for breakfast. So if I just click the choose button here, then it will find the 7 files which are in there, all different sources of text file, and it will bring those into the project and name them according to the file name. So it says 7 sources have been successfully imported. See, it's got the name at the top, and then it's got the text just in here. So if I go to, whose is this here? Sarah's text here, great. You can see that's their text. And if you've got these, basically these 3 tabs here that let you flip between the different sources. And if you've got more than 3 sources in your project, you can see a list of them here using the source browser. So you can see these are all the different sources I've got in here. So I've got Jane, Mabel, Sarah. So I'll choose Jane to start with. And that's the tab which has become active here. And I can flip between those other 3 that I clicked on with those tabs there. So it's quite quick to go through a couple of those. Now, it's quite useful when you bring in these sources to describe them in some way so we can differentiate between them. And we do that with this button on the top right. This is the source properties view. And at the moment it's blank. You'll see it just says title Jane. So we're working with Jane's source, and we can order the properties in different ways when we create them. If we just click this plus button here, we can add a new property. Now, property is a way that describes the sources. So an example property might be name or age or gender, occupation, when the interview was conducted, your notes or comments on the interview. So they can be absolutely anything. They can be numbers, they can be text, they can be long comments. So if at the moment I just put in something like age, in 32, now we've created a property called age and a value for Jane, which is 32. So now we know that Jane is 32 years old. And if we click on the tab down here to Mabel's source, you'll see we can see the age property here, but there's no values associated. So we didn't say how old Mabel was. Now with this drop down box here, you can choose existing values, which you've already entered in. So if someone else is 32, you can put that in there. Or if you want to put in a new value, so Mabel is actually 28, we can put that straight in that box there. So this makes that kind of data entry very easy to do. Let's put in one other property for now, and we'll put in favorite food. And I think Mabel's favorite food is going to be marshmallows. I think I've spelled that right. Okay. So if we go to the properties and values editor here, this dialog gives us a lot more control over the sources. So you see we've created this favorite food one here. We could change this to cuisine. We can change how we spell marshmallows. Maybe we want to hyphenate it like that. We can change anything like that. We can also put it in alphabetical order if we've got lots of those. We can add new values. So we can put in curry. We can also add a value here for chocolate. You'll see there's also this option here for multiple choice. Now for something like favorite food, someone may have more than one favorite that you want to register. And you can do that by having a multiple choice category. Normally something like age, and by default, properties are only allowed one value. So you can only be one age. But for something like favorite cuisine, it makes sense to have multiple choice. So if we've selected that now, you'll see we've still got Mabel as favorite cuisine. But because multiple choice, we can also now add chocolate as well. Now that sounds like a good combination. And if we go to Sarah's text here, now we've got no age, so we'll make her 28. Her favorite cuisine is going to be curry. It could be curry and marshmallows if you wanted some heinous combination like that. If you wanted to change your mind, that little blue cross there will remove that. So that's working with the sources and the properties of them. And what you'll see later is that's very useful for looking to explore your text to see, well, you know, what does everybody from a particular age range say? Or what do people whose favorite food is curry think about these different healthy eating options? So that gives you the option to do a lot more in the future. But you don't have to add these properties when you start the project. You can always do them later on. and you can change them at any stage. Now clicking this little cross button there brings us back to the text source. So that's Sarah's text. Let's go see Mabel's. Let's start coding up Mabel's. So now we've brought in our text, we've described them, and now we want to actually code them. So a lot of our time in qualitative analysis is spent thinking about what kind of themes we want to talk about. So be that something like healthy options, or even something simple like, I can see someone here says porridge. So that's quite a good option. So I'm going to create a new theme here by clicking on that plus button there. I'm going to call it porridge. We can put in a longer description here if you want to describe what that means. And there's also the option here to change the color. So I'll click save. We'll keep that yellow as the moment. And if I wanted to code some text to basically say to the software, this is about porridge, so I can find everything about porridge later on, I just select some text and drag and drop that onto the porridge button. Now you see that's now got turned yellow, and there's this little highlight here which shows us that this section of text is about porridge. If you hover your mouse over it, in the bottom left of the screen where it says settings at the moment, you'll see it says the name of the theme that your mouse is hovering over the highlight stripe here for. If we want to remove this at any stage, we can right click and choose remove highlight. Now I don't actually want to do that, so I've got undo and redo buttons, so I can undo that change. Now let's create another theme. Let's create a theme called bread. I'm going to keep that green actually for the moment. And you'll see here, we eat wholemeal bread most of the time. Sometimes I spoil them with white bread. Well, that's about bread. So I'll drag and drop that onto the bread bubble. So now you can see we've got these two bubbles here. We can click and drag to move them around. And we've got some text which is about porridge and some which is about bread. Now actually, there's two things going on in this sentence. We're saying most of the time they eat wholemeal bread, sometimes they have white bread. So let's create two new themes. Now we can do this a slightly different way. We can right click anywhere on the canvas, choose add quirk here, and then we can go wholemeal bread. I think I'm going to make that brown. And I'm going to create that as a subcategory of bread just by dragging the wholemeal bread bubble onto the bread bubble. And now you'll see that's become a kind of clustered category. So we know that there's a connection, a relationship between bread and wholemeal bread. And what we can also do is if we take this sentence here, which is about white bread, we can drop it onto the plus button to create a new theme which has the text that we've highlighted already enclosed in it. So if we call this white bread, I guess this should probably be white. We can drag the white bread bubble onto bread. And you can see here, that section is about white bread. And we can drag this section of text here onto the bread first, then onto wholemeal bread. And there it's popped out. So we've coded this whole sentence of being about bread, half of it about wholemeal bread, and half of it about white bread. So that's showing you how you can create clusters, create themes here. You can always undo these at any stage just by pulling out the bubbles. So it's very easy to create new categories like this and to change your mind later on. And you can have any number of categories around a parent node. And you can also have subcategories. So we could have different brands of wholemeal bread if we wanted represented here, or different types of white bread. So that's basically shows you how we do the coding in Quirkos. What I'm going to do now is actually open a file which has already been coded. So you can imagine we can keep going through, reading through these different sources, looking at some of those other ones, dragging and drop. Let's say this is about porridge. Drag that on porridge 2. And now you'll see what's happening is the more we add onto the porridge category, the bigger that gets relative to the other bubbles. So the size of the bubbles we have here shows us how much of the text has been coded to them. And this is really useful because you've got a constantly updating live view of what things are emerging from your text data. So now let's open an existing project. So we'll choose open new or existing, and then I'm going to choose open other. And you'll see there's a coded example, breakfast. Now, all these examples are available to download on our website. So if you wanted to play around with some data before you use your own, or see an example of a coded project that's been finished, you can download those and play around with them just like I'm doing here. Now, I'm just going to open this, and now you can see, okay, so this piece of text has been coded a lot. So these are the same sources. So there's Sarah, there's Jane, Mabel and Mubarak will be in there as well somewhere. Oh, I've not got Mabel in this example. But this means that we can see how this has been coded. Now, in the view option here, we've turned on a label that shows us the number of codings there. We can turn that off and on. And you can see here with all these highlighted strips and with what's being displayed in the bottom left of the screen, we can see the different sources of data which the text has been coded to. So you can see here we've got a category for breakfast and all of these different size bubbles showing us lots of coding about toast, not very much about yogurt here. And there's also subcategories of juice as well. Actually, that one doesn't make sense to have juice under diet, so I'm going to remove that right there. But grapefruit, yes, I think that should probably be under the type category of juice, or orange juice. So we can put orange juice, whoops, under juice there. So let's see now what it looks like when we want to find the text that we've coded to one of these categories. So for example, let's look at this healthy bubble. I know that there are 8 pieces of text which have been coded about healthy across all the sources. And if I double click on it, it'll show me on the right here all the sources of text, tell me where they come from, and any other codes that they might have been assigned to as well as healthy. So we can very quickly then read what's everybody saying about healthy options. And using these ... buttons here, you can load more of the source. So if you want to see the sentence, excuse me, before or after the section of text which has been coded, you can read that and then see more of the context around and understand why that's been coded in that way. So let's click on the home button. And now let's look at something with the subcategories. We double click on family here. This will show us, well, family is the parent node at the top, and below it we've got these other different categories. So if we want to see everything which is under family, that's what is showing at the moment on the right. But if we click on children, then we can see just the text from children, or adults, just the text from adults. So we can also code in this view as well. So if we wanted to decide this is about adults, but it's also actually about their grandparent as well, we can drag and drop and code there. And you can see that stripe gets added there. So again, the home button, whenever we are, will take us back to the main screen. And that's how our project looks. So you can see here, so far we've coded 36% of the project of this particular source. That's 88% of the total project here. And we can also zoom in and out if we want to see the bubbles differently. This is useful if we've got lots of different bubbles on the canvas. Now we've also got these options in view here to look at a tree view. So we've got a kind of list hierarchy here. This is a lot more similar to what you'll see in other qualitative software. And there's also different options to arrange these. So if we want to put them in alphabetical order, for example, or order of size, then we can neatly arrange them. And also turn that off so it remembers exactly where we place those bubbles on the canvas. Okay, so let's look at one other way in which we can code the text, and that's with the search function here. So if I click on the search button, this pops up here, and we can put in some text. Let's look for fruit. And so putting in fruit will show us all the different places where fruit appears. And I'm pretty sure everything that we have for fruit here, maybe not this sentence. So we can code directly from the search results. Picks all the fruit herself. Is that on the fruit category? Well, let's see. No, it wasn't. So now we've added that to the fruit category. So it's very easy to drag and drop from here. Again, we can load more of the sentence if we want it. We can code straight from the search results onto any of the bubbles there. Now there's a bunch of options here which can make your searches more specific by looking for whole words or alternative words like fruits, fruiting. We can also look at synonyms. There's a built-in synonym database. It's not always very clear what that's going to come up with. So the only word synonym that it has for fruit is yield, which is a very different meaning for something to bear fruit, I suppose. But that can sometimes be useful, and you can include these words in your searches by clicking on them there. You can also choose to have searches. For example, if you just wanted to see search results just from the men in the project, that's where men have said the word fruit or yield. And you can keep adding more criteria to make your search more vague across your sources or more refined as you choose. So that's a quick overview of the search there. We'll close that. And let's have a look now at some of the queries we can do. Now, if you remember, when we started out, we looked at the creating source properties. Let's have a look at what we have here. So we've got gender, age, city, where they live, favorite TV show this time, and whether they're employed or not. So we've got some different properties in here, but we can look for results across any of these. So if we click on the query view here, along the top here, you'll see what we want to search for, so property, but we can also look for the author, so that's who did a particular piece of work on a project. We can look at the date when that work was done, and we can also use the levels, which is another way to group the source properties. So if we click on property, which is already selected there, we can choose any of these. So let's look for city, and we'll choose Edinburgh. And if we run a query there, that'll give us the results now from everybody who is defined as living in the city of Edinburgh. And we can see that toast is the thing that people in Edinburgh have been talking about most. And if we click on any of these bubbles, we can see the actual text and where they come from. So it looks like Jane here and Sarah here. These are people who live in Edinburgh. But if we want to do a comparison, you'll see on the left side here, there's this compare button, and that splits the screen in two. And we can choose something else. So if we choose city again and Belfast and update this, okay, so now on the left we've got everything that people in Belfast said, in Edinburgh said, and on the right we've got everything people in what Belfast said. So you can see people in Belfast aren't talking about toast as much, but they are talking about diet and disliking a lot more. So maybe there's something interesting there in that geographical distinction that we want to investigate. So we can read through the text and see what's significant about those differences there. So there's a good important thing to remember about qualitative analysis. You're always trying to look not just for the numbers to see, well, there's more people talking about this, but you actually want to look through and see exactly what they're saying and if there's any significance in that. So those are the query views. You can also generate reports based on the query views by pressing each of these buttons here, depending on whether you want the results from the left or the right query. But let's go home and let's generate a query for the whole project and see what that looks like. Sorry, a report for the whole project and see what that looks like. So you can imagine now we've coded our data, we've created some hierarchy to our codes. We basically now want to look and see, get a summary of our project and maybe even some more detail about what's going on here. And I'm just going to flip here because I don't think this is showing it. So just need to change the view here. So it's showing the screen. There we go. And now you should be able to see, here's the report which we've generated. So on the left side is a preview of what the report will look like. And on the right, you've got all the different options of sections which you can have in there. So at the moment, for example, we've got Quirk summary. So there's this very long table here of all of the different themes or codes or nodes that we have in the project, their relationship to each other, if there's a hierarchy, who added them to the project. So you can see that Daniel's been working on this project, JSL, when they did that work, and how many codes are on them. We can remove that section if we don't need that information just by unticking the Quirk summary there. You'll see here's some information, the property summary. So the different properties, the age is not a very useful one here to show numerically, but city is, so it shows a lot more people from Edinburgh than anywhere else. And this not defined here shows that we need to do a little bit more work, especially for employed. So only one person we've defined whether they're employed or not so far. Below this, you'll also see the canvas view. So this is basically how we arrange the codes. And there's a bunch of different options here if you look at the canvas view. So we can have them, again, ordered in alphabetical or in terms of size or title or when they were created, and we can also have the different ways in which we can visualize the data, which I'll go back and show you in a minute. And you'll also see here's the actual text. So text first sorted by theme. So everything that everybody said about healthy eating options, so Sarah and Jane and Mubarak, here's the actual quotes there. And then for toast and things like that, we can also tick this option here, turn off the text by theme and turn on text by source. And now we've got everything that one particular said about all the different things. And there's lots of different ways that we can customize that and the amount of information that we can show about these. So it's very powerful, and you can spend quite a lot of time making sure the report has all the detail that you want. Now, you'll also see here there's a couple of options. You can open this in a web browser, so you can create basically a kind of website, a HTML page that anyone with a browser can open and look at your coded data. You can also print this out exactly as it is, save as HTML. That's very similar to the web browser output. And there's an option here to also create a PDF. So if we create a PDF file here, sample report, you can then find and open that PDF file, and that will show all the detail. There we go, which is in the properties, a PDF that we can share with everyone. That's quite useful. Great. So I'm now going to show you a couple of other export options. So that was the report. Close that here, go back to the main screen. We can also generate a Word report. So if I click here on the export documents export the sources as a Word document, this will create a quite useful way to share your coded data and to take it away and look away from the computer. You'll see in any word processing software, you'll get this view where the text has been coded and annotated using color-coded comments. So this allows you to see what you've coded each section of text about. You don't need to have Quirkos to do that. Anyone with Word can do that. So it's a very easy way to print out, if you've got a color printer, your coded text, and also to make sure that you've coded everything you want. You can then go back and obviously code or change anything you've missed. There's also the option here to create a CSV export, and that will put this data actually into data here. This will create spreadsheet formatted data. So if we look at this highlight column here, this will show us all the different coded projects that we have, the different experts of text here. You can see here's the text, when it was coded and who did it, the color, which source it belongs to, all the different data here. So this allows you to do a lot more statistical analysis or use filters and pivot table to explore the data that comes from a particular person, for example. So again, another way that you can share the data with anyone. And if we go back here, there's also different options for how you can save the project. So Quirkos is saving your project file constantly as you go along onto your computer. And that means that if you wanted to change your mind about anything, you need to kind of have a backup to go for. So that's why you've got this save as option. And that allows you to give the project a new name, example 3 or something like that. And that will kind of set that exactly as it is. Now, there's one other option here. I want to go back to the project that we had before. And I want to show you some of the other ways that you can kind of visualize the connections between the data quickly. So what I've not shown you yet is the different options you can get by right-clicking on any of the bubbles here. So if we right-click here on healthy, you'll see there's a bunch of different options here. We can show the Quirk overview. Now that's that view we saw before by double-clicking, where we can get the list of all the text coded to that bubble. There's also this show overlap view here. And let's have a look and see what that looks like. Now what that's showing here is any occurrence where a piece of text is coded to more than one theme. So is a piece of text here coded to healthy and like, or healthy and diet? Well, yes. And the more that that happens, the more that a particular code overlaps with another one in the text, the closer these bubbles are brought together. So like is the one which correlates most closely to healthy. So that's kind of suggesting to us that the text and the interviews are saying that people like healthy eating options. Also worth bearing in mind that it's quite closely correlated with dislike. So that might not be very significant, but it's interesting how people are talking about toast here as a healthy eating option, but not very much about bread or coffee or tea. Those don't seem to be seen as healthy, because if we look, there's 0 overlapping codes for them just by hovering the mouse on there. Now this view is live and updates, so we can drag and drop here. This is about diet as well. We can add that. Now that changes the layout of our text quite significantly. And we can get this view for any of the different bubbles that we have here. And that also allows us to show those overlap views in the report as well. So if we want to show someone else the correlation between some of the themes we're working on, that's very easy to do. I'll show you some of the other options here, right-clicking. They're fairly self-explanatory. There's the quirk properties. Now that's what we entered originally here. So we've got these options to change the title and the color and description, and also to assign different levels. So this is another way of grouping the codes together. We've also got the option to merge different quirks. So if we've got a couple of superfluous codes that we want to bring together, we can use merge to do that. If we want to split apart a code, there's a duplicate option here. And that will create 2 quirks with the same name and with the same data coded underneath it. And there's also the option here to remove the quirk, so we can delete that from the canvas if we want. And don't forget, all of the actions here have undo and redo facility, so you can constantly go back and change your mind. Well, that's a very brief overview of the software. Do contact us if you have any questions or if there's anything you want to understand. We run these workshops pretty much every month. But we also try to run them in your local area and come and visit your university. So let us know if you would like to come and do a presentation to a group about how we can use Quirkos. Don't forget to go onto our website and download the free trial. All you have to do is go to www.quirkos.com, and you'll see on the front page you can download the trial directly from there. And you'll see on the support materials here and learn materials here lots of other different ways to watch and learn about Quirkos. So you can watch quick video guides, there are written manuals as well, and you'll also find these example data sources that we had for the project. So here's a pretty useful way to get started, a kind of step-by-step manual if you prefer to read through that way. So that's pretty much everything that we're going to cover today. Thanks so much for tuning in and having a look. And do get in contact if you have any questions, and we hope that Quirkos helps you make your qualitative analysis simple and painless. Thanks very much.